Welcome back. Now, this Renault is planning to propose a partnership with Nissan. That is according to the Wall Street Journal this morning. This says former Nissan CEO Carlos Ghosn was released from Japan jail last night with conditions. Ghosn said this in a statement: "I maintain my innocence and am committed to vigorously defending myself against these meritless and unsubstantiated accusations. I hope to be given a fair trial where the truth will come to light and I will be fully vindicated." Joining me right now is Michigan State University law professor and the Japanese legal system co-author, Frank Ravitch. And good to see you, Frank. Thanks very much for joining us. You got to explain the judiciary system in Japan for us, because right from the get-go, I reported on this program that I felt that this was a total coup, that Carlos Ghosn was thrown in jail because the government, as well as a lot of people under him, were worried that they were going to merge Renault and Nissan. He was just let out with these conditions that he's not allowed to speak to his wife, which is extraordinary. Can you explain how the Japanese judicial system works, that they could just throw a guy in jail without any due process?
This is actually an issue that's very controversial even in Japan. There's the pretrial detention system there. What they're really going for, they try to get confessions. And, you know, they have a very high conviction rate. A big part of that is because they're able to use things like isolation and pressure to try to get confessions. You know, there's a few factors there. I mean, one is that what's happened with him. I mean, there's a few things that are unusual. For example, being rearrested after coming out on bail. But a lot of this is stuff that Japanese legal scholars and others have complained about as being a real problem in the system, where you can be detained, you can be interrogated, your lawyer won't necessarily be present when you're interrogated, even though you have a right to a lawyer. Yeah. And so it's really a problematic situation. There's actually an amendment right now that's proposed to the Japanese criminal code that would change this. But for now, that obviously that's not in place.
Do you think he's going to get a fair trial? I mean, that's all he wants, is a fair trial.
I think that's a really fascinating question, because Japan is for all the lack of due process during the detention phase of things, there really is pretty good due process at the trial level. But it's a fascinating cultural thing, because in Japan, what they really want to see is contrition. They want to see people. Most trials in Japan are not about challenging the claims of the prosecutors. They're about lowering sentences, because frequently it's based on confession. Yeah. But in less than 10% of cases are people actually challenging the charges. But when they do, I think there is a chance at a fair trial.
So that's the thing. I mean, they have been keeping him in detention with the lights on 24/7. They took away his watch. He never knows what time it is. He's got the lights on all day long. This is a way to torture him so that he doesn't know what time it is, what day it is. And now he has agreed to these strict conditions for his release. He's not allowed to contact his wife. My sources tell me he will not be able to speak to his wife, Carol, without a lawyer present. I spoke with Carol Ghosn earlier this month in an exclusive interview, and this is what she told me, that what happened when the officers raided their home and then they interrogated her. She didn't commit any crimes. Listen to this.
Well, they took my passport. I didn't understand why they took my passport. I'm not under arrest. I'm not a suspect. They took my phones. They took my laptop. They took these letters that I wrote every day to Carlos while he was in the detention center. They took all the papers that his lawyers gave him regarding the case, which is they're not supposed to take all these things. And then they wanted to take me in for questioning, and I said, no, I want a lawyer. I'm an American citizen.
She was here. She was crying on set. She was so upset, Frank. And, Jack Brewer is with me this morning. Look at the pictures of Carlos Ghosn. He's been completely diminished. And for what? Because he wanted to merge a French company with the jewel that is Nissan of the Tokyo government?
Yeah, it's just heartbreaking. I mean, look at this, Look at the front page of the Wall Street Journal. The man looks like he's aged 25 years. At what point does this become a human rights issue?
Yeah, what do you think, Frank?
I mean, I think, there's a lot going on here. I mean, these detentions that happen, I mean, it's not, you know, like people are hosing him down with water and things like that. What they use to get the confessions is isolation. You know, the reason a watch is taken away, they're worried about people committing suicide, so they take almost anything away that could be used in that way. But what they're really doing, the isolation is really pretty horrific. So in a Japanese prison, their prisons are light years ahead of ours in terms of cleanliness and food and things like that. But during the detention period, you're truly isolated, and that is a way to try to get a confession out of him. With that said, I'm still not. I mean, this is something that the trial will show. I'm not 100% convinced that this is all about Nissan because of the fact that, Renault, the investigations in France by Renault were turned over to prosecutors there.
Yeah.
And so I think that there is some concern, I think, with these newer charges. The older charges from March have to do with the Japanese law in 2009, which required executive compensation to be divulged, and there could have been some innocent mistake on his part in terms of how, it's in Japan, compensation has to be divulged when fixed, not when released.
Well, look, I am being told that the reason that they came up with this new charge and this new restriction that he's not allowed to speak to his wife is because she did an interview with me. And because then she just went and wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post. They want to shut her up. So she comes to this set 2 weeks ago. She sits here. She does an interview with me. The Japanese prosecutor was mad that she spoke out and told us. And by the way, I was supposed to do an interview with Carlos Ghosn, and they found out and they rearrested him. So they want to shut them up.
Well, I think one of the fundamental problems with the Japanese detention system is that they frequently, when someone's about to be released, they'll file new charges so that the person can be held longer. I'm not sure they're as worried about the Western media as we think that they are. There's a sort of a rigidity within the Japanese system. So people are just sort of following the rules. One of the interesting things about them preventing him from speaking to her, there's this element in the Japanese criminal process where if someone is there's a fear that someone will hide evidence or
they think she's going to destroy evidence. That's what they told her that she's going to destroy evidence. Frank, it's great to get your take on this. Thanks very much, Frank Ravitch, joining us there. I should point out that today President Trump is hosting Prime Minister Abe at the White House. I don't think this is going to come up, but it's interesting to take note of that.